Welcome to Stampscaping 101. We're going to be finishing off some stamp sketches here that I had to dig through my big pile of kind of unfinished stamp sketch cards to find. And these ones are featuring the blooms and bridge. And I believe I did all of these sketches here in video 253. I'm not sure if it was each one of these, but someone had asked if I had finished these ones off. And I had finished off one or two, I think, or maybe it was what. And this one was finished off in just kind of a lighting exercise. But these two right here I didn't touch, and I thought I would finish them off here for her. And let's see what we can come up with. Now, 253, I'm up on video 815 now, so we're talking about quite a few years ago when I did these. I didn't check the date, but I thought maybe sometimes it's good to, I don't know, hold on to some of the stamp sketches you do. I'd recommend doing, a fair share of them. Just to kind of keep the compositional types of gears going in our heads. I don't know. There's something to compositional structures. Okay. Now usually I start a scene, then I work it through its composition and finish it off, to completion. But sometimes it's good just to sit down and just do compositions. I think we get different ideas by doing that. I don't know if it's kind of using a different part of the brain or exercising a different part of the brain. When it comes to just visualizing how certain images can be used. And if you use them in repetition like this, then, like with the blooms and bridge, then, I don't know, we get other kind of ideas that kind of come to mind, I believe. I don't know. I generally think that, because I know that's the case for me. If I'm concentrating on kind of like techniques or something like that, then that's kind of what I'm focused on, as opposed to compositional structures and kind of variations with, existing types of designs. I really want to see how a new technique will look applied to that design, as opposed to seeing different ways in which the design can be used in the, its basic structure. So I don't know. I should do those more often. A lot of people like just seeing the composition, the stamp sketch videos too, just seeing, how some designs can come together, both for the advanced and for the beginning stamper. Okay. All right. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just laying down a basic warm tone base coat antique linen. That's a really good one to go with. On this one right here, that's grayscale. I'm wondering if I should. No, I'm looking at. I think there is some warm tone in there, so I don't know if I used some of this on there before or not, but let's go ahead and use it on this kind of more grayscale one. When you add a warm tinge like this, it becomes a warm gray. And when you introduce temperature like that too, you're kind of taking a neutral, and then you're introducing temperature to it, okay? And when you do that, when you kind of go into another kind of a defining trait of color, okay, you can potentially create a richer surface. You know what I mean? The more kind of things that you do, so it would be value, dark and light, temperature, warm and cool, intensity, dull and bright. The more of those types of things that you introduce into a piece, the potentially richer it can become. Now, that's not to say that you should do that for every scene or anything like that. Not at all. I mean, I love grayscale pieces, okay? But just saying, if you want to do something like that, you're kind of extending the range, the visual range of several different aspects of the card, okay? All right, so in here, as I'm doing this, I'm kind of defining light as I do this too. Now, this is such a light color that I'm not being too careful about it, but just in general, what you'll see me do, and I'll point it out here, I'll show you. Just in general. Okay, so right in this piece right here, there's a lot of tight types of objects in here. There's not a lot of open area, in other words. But what I'm doing is I'm kind of leaving a little bit of area light up here, and an area light right around here, because that's our subject matter right there. I want it to be backlit for the most part, okay? Backlit meaning that there's just going to be some light on the meadow here, the grassy area in here. And then we'll have some light coming into here somewhere. So what I'm doing is I'm just kind of creating some light up here by putting an area of darkness right here and an area of darkness right here. And then we'll just have some spattering of light in here. So this is oscillation of light and dark going from light, darker, light, dark, light, dark. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter kind of where you put it down in this area, just as long as there's kind of this oscillation. And then that is the thing that defines lighting, okay? It's not, I mean, you can do, like that doe right there is spotlit, okay? And if you have subject matter, it's just a good idea to put the spotlight on them. It's like a stage, okay, or something like that. But this oscillation and retention of light somewhere in there, that's what you need, okay? You don't need to get too complicated or formulaic about it, like, wait a minute, where would the light be? It's really wherever you want it to be, okay? So just kind of think about it like that. What do you want to emphasize within your piece and retain more of the white of the paper in that area, okay? As opposed to seeing something like this whole area. Okay, everything's going to be grass except for that. So you color it absolutely evenly. What that does is it flattens out something. It doesn't look so deep in terms of visual space, and it looks flatter in terms of, you know, just an absence of variation in there, okay? And it's not so much anything that you have to add, it's just a matter of what you retain, okay? And that retention can be anything, okay? It doesn't have to be a certain amount of anything, just as long as it's there, okay? All right. Now that's just kind of a starting point, and it's what I kind of go off of in, or I go by in, I don't know, 90% of my scenes. So it doesn't get much more complicated than kind of that notion of just the retention of some areas of light, okay? And like I said, if I were to do this scene again another 3 or 4 times, maybe there's going to be a little bit of variation with each time, okay? So it's not like there's a set best way to do it, okay? It's whatever you want it to be. Now, some of you are saying, hey, I don't know how I want it to be. Well, you just want it varied, okay? Just think about it like that. Think about it like, I don't know, you might think about it in terms of, you have, let's say, 2 spotlights minimum if this was a stage. Now, just point your 2 spotlights in 2 different areas, okay? And how do you do that? You just kind of define the area around the spotlight. So in here, like in this meadow area, let's color this in, okay? Now watch out when you get into your darker tones. This is not a darker tone right now. This is bamboo leaves, okay? It's a pretty light green. And what I'm doing here is I'm bringing my color in around that deer, doe, whatever. And now that deer is spotlit, okay? Because I didn't take my color and just color it all out. The area behind it is a little bit lighter. Here I'm putting a little bit more of that in there. I thought maybe that's too light, okay? All right, so see that right there? And I'll focus in more on the shadows here. By the way, these are all on glossy cardstock. I was wishing that I did some of these on my matte cardstock because there's some other things that I'd like to do on these at this point in time. I wasn't using so many colored pencils back in the time that I did this. Using matte cardstock was kind of different. I wasn't using paint pens, certainly not the large paint pens. I was using gel pens though, but I don't know. You come up with, I don't know, different techniques and whatnot that you want to employ in your pieces, but in this case, we're kind of limited by the surface that I stamp these on. It's just, I can't do certain things, like you're certainly not going to do chalks or something like that. Not that I do chalks, but pastels. But the colored pencils just, I mean, I can use it a little bit on here, but, glossy cardstock's kind of like the last surface that you'd want to use with colored pencils, just because of the lack of tooth, they call it. Okay, now this is Blooms and Bridge, and these flowers are down here. Okay, I'm going to choose what color I'm going to do those flowers in, but I'm going to do that later. Okay, I'm kind of leaning towards white because they are very large. Okay, I don't know. I do them in a different color, but I think white will be kind of cool. Alright, so you can see this right here. See how I'm going a little bit darker with this green now? This one's Cottage Ivy. And I'm retaining my light now with this color, okay, still, okay? So when you move into these medium to darker tones, just kind of be careful about not toning out all of the light that you've established with your lighter tones, okay? Okay, so that's, I don't know, that's when people tend to lose their lighting that they've established. When they get into the darker tones, they go like this, oops, and all their light's gone. So you just kind of put on the brakes with your darker tones, okay? All right, let's try this walnut stain here for these tree trunks here, okay? Of course, the distressings have a great range of kind of aged brown hue colors. Ranger, don't discontinue the distressings. I haven't heard anything. I'm just saying that they discontinued the Adirondack colors back when, which I really liked. they're Adirondack lights. I used to use those as my base colors all the time because they were so light. They were really fantastic for that purpose. Probably not very good for other things. They were shadow stamping, so people weren't doing shadow stamping. Even when, even when they created those, they weren't doing. I didn't see a lot of shadow stamping being done. So just super lightings. I used to call them seashells. Then they changed the name to Adirondack lights, and then they discontinued all the Adirondack line. Happens with the I don't know, the crafting industry. You get one type of line that comes out in a certain brand, and if that one really takes off, the other ones tend to kind of, I don't know, get lost in the shuffle, and then they end up getting discontinued. So I don't know, there's a lot of inks out there. I was talking with someone about Vivid pads recently, and they still had theirs, and they still work, but those pads were probably discontinued 20 years ago. But really great ink pads. But I don't know. There's different types of things like that I wish were still around. But so be it. I guess they got to make room for the new. And of course, Marvies Marvy pads were discontinued, but you can still get the re-inkers and blank pads. So thankfully, they are still available because I love those inks. Okay, so adding in like that, all right? Let's put some brown into this one right here. I'm going to use my alcohol inks on these pieces as well. Okay, now watch this. Now see, this is the tendency for people on a bridge like this is just color it completely even. Okay, that bridge is wooden and it's brown, okay? But just like anything, there's going to be different lighting on the thing. This is all wood right here, this stamp, okay? But you can see that there's different darknesses depending on what side of the stamp we're looking at in regards to the direction of the lighting that's in here. My hand, you know, is going to be different, okay? You can look at just a straight type of surface like this, okay? And if there's any type of variation in it, see that thing's not, it's not all white. There's a shadow in there, right? There's variation in it, okay? So something like this, you don't have to say to yourself, wait a minute, where is that variation going to be? You just vary it, okay? It's just wherever you put it, that's where the variation is going to be. So I put it down here, down up there, and then there's a little bit of lighting on it, okay? So that's all you need to do. You just don't do everything exactly the same. So in other words, people are used to coloring things exactly the same because they're used to doing images that have outlines on them. If you have an image that has an outline on it, okay, outlines tend to flatten something and it takes away the dimension. Okay, I see that in designs all the time. Now some are outline designs, but a lot of designs they want it to be tonal, so they have tone on it, but then they have the outlines in it, which is a complete opposite type of thing that you're going for to create the illusion of depth. So you can try to compensate for that type of rendering error by toning in like this. So see this bridge right here, so I'm just varying it like that. That's why, see, there's no lines in this design at all. It's just tone. And I have tone defining the edge of something like that. But what you do is you just reiterate it with your color. So just don't color it even, you know, completely even. And then that looks more naturalistic, right? It looks like light is falling on it, okay? Now, I don't worry about those flowers because I'm going to redefine those flowers with the use of the paint pen, okay? That's how I don't, you know, it makes it really easy for me when I don't have to worry about that type of thing because I'll just add it back in later and I don't have to do like masking or something like that ahead of time. Okay, let's use some of this brown and this green. Okay, this is the walnut stain on here. You're saying, wait a minute, walnut stain in the grass like that? I tend to like that brown tinge in my grassy areas because it kind of mellows that grass area out somewhat from being too hot of a green. Okay, so that being said, I'm going to take some of this. I'm just going to use that same walnut stain area and dab into my very bright light green Marvy pad, okay? So it'll give me a little bit of a different incarnation of this green, but this green is really good because it's a really super bright, warm green, okay? Marvy inks are very bright and intense. So if you want to increase the intensity level of a piece, you don't have to change every ink pad that you're working with. You can just add one Marvy or two or whatever you want into the mix. Okay, so I'm just adding this right over the top of, what was that, 2 distress inks and one or two memento inks, okay? But watch this right here. I'll do it on half of this and you can see if you can see the difference, okay? All right, so you can see that right there. See the difference between this side of the scene and this side. Now, I mean, this side I'm using a much warmer green, and you can use one, but they're just those other brands just tend to be a little bit more dull, which is a good compliment, though, for the bright. I don't want things like super bright, everywhere. I just want there to be a nice range of intensity in my piece, okay? So the distress inks are the ultimate complement to something really bright because they're supposed to look real aged and worn. So you get the real aged and warm, or aged and dull, contrasting with the very bright and, I guess, new. Okay? Okay, so that is that. Let's do a little bit of color up here in the sky. I wasn't going to add much of anything, but let's just go with a little bit of, I don't use this one too much. I don't even know if that's still wet. But let's take a summer sky, okay? Now I'm not going to color this whole thing. I'm going to approach my sky in a similar fashion to this area down here. In other words, don't color it the whole thing in, okay? So I'm just taking some of this and I'll add a little bit of a vignette in here, okay? See, I'm kind of spotlighting my quote stamp right there. Now, if I was to just start the scene from scratch, I would typically stamp that quote last, okay? Just because if I'm adding all these colors in here and whatnot, like I couldn't go over that quote stamp right now if I just stamped it because it would be a little bit wet still, especially on this glossy cardstock, but I can just go right over it here, no problem. Okay, but anyways, here's what I was talking about. I don't know if you can see that, but I've left kind of this area right in here untouched with the blue ink. All right, so it kind of spotlights my quote. My quote isn't light. There's a light area down here. It's kind of reiterating what's going on down here, up here. Or this area is reiterating that, whatever way you want to look at it. Okay, weathered wood. Let's see if this has any ink in it at all. I think I found this in my workshop supplies or something like that out in the garage. Like a couple years ago. From like a decade earlier. Because I don't remember buying this. Or using it. Alright, looks pretty good. It's kind of like it's a weathered blue-gray, cool gray, okay? That's why I love these things. Provides a nice contrast. But see that right there? Doesn't it have kind of a nice look to it? Just kind of that highlighting up there. And again, it's kind of like lighter up there and lighter down here. You see that? It's like light source and reflected light right here. You have light, dark, light. And I've mentioned that many times in previous videos. And I have a video just dedicated just to that dynamic right there. You can do that type of thing in, I don't know, 90% of your scenes. And it would be a very effective, really simple lighting scheme. You have just an area of light up here and an area of light down here. Well, how do you create light up here and light down here? Well, you just have something in the middle that's darker. It could be tone or it could be an image. It could be a row of trees up there separating those two areas of light. Okay, now I'm adding this down to my grass, okay, just to give a little bit of continuity between sky and grass. It looks pretty good. Blue is a component of green, so I'm not doing this so I want some of that bluish gray on that tree. No, it's just kind of adding a little bit more tone like that. Okay. It's kind of mellowing out the scene too. This can be a very bright color, so I like to mellow out that tone with some additional, grayscale or something like that. I don't know if I'll get all the way to black. We might. Okay, so our distress inks served us well there. Okay, now I think we're getting to a point here. I mean, we could have done this earlier too. But we can come into these with our more specific types of coloring. So seeing here, I'm just going with a very light value right here. It's probably lighter than the browns that I already used on here, but I start off with something light to begin with, okay? And I'm just adding in this additional tone like this. See, I can get right on the edge of that trunk, or right here, there's this very narrow tree trunk. I mean, this pen is just going to be much more conducive for getting that kind of detailed area than a wadded up paper towel. So here we go with that. Oh, here on the bridge, I can get into some of this area, like there's these beams like this going across, and I'll put a little bit of a shadow down on them. I can come across here too and add some texture. You can get in between, some of those flowers if you wish. Okay. Like this. There's these planks on the bridge. Okay. So I'm coming across this way onto them. I'm not coloring them completely. Even I'm kind of going like this in some of these areas. Okay. Am I being careful? Not at all, but I am, well, there's one thing I'm being careful about, and that's to not color the whole thing in. Okay, I want to retain some of that light on there. Okay, here is a biscuit. It's just kind of a little bit of a warmer tinge. It's kind of related to, this orangish tinge. It's kind of related to brown, so you can come in here and make some of that brown that I just added a little bit richer. Why not add it into some of this tree, these tree trunks right here. On here, I don't know if, well, you can add it like that, but I don't know. On this one right here, I think I'm going to leave that one kind of minimal in terms of my coloring. You don't have to do all this stuff with, your multimedia alcohol pens or whatever. You can just do it with one or the other, but I just tend to think that that looks really quite nice. Just having that kind of more detailed variation. Okay, so what I'm doing, it looks kind of like that. I'm putting some of that onto these tree trunks right here, and that gives me a little bit more variation on those trunks. Okay, this is wood down here, so I can come across here. Now, this color right here might be a little bit too harsh. Well, not too bad. If it was a little bit too harsh, then you take your blender pen and just go back in there. Or what I use is just a lighter color again, like something like this. Camel, I'm just grabbing pens. Okay, this isn't like some kind of format, and then I'll just blend in that darker tone. You can do that kind of on your glossy cardstock. It's not like a cryogen paper or something like that, but it's, glossy is kind of holds enough of that ink on the surface that you can really kind of blend it in pretty well. And for some of the darker areas, you can look at the design itself. I have some areas that are on the design that are a little bit darker, and I can go in here and I can add a darker tinge to that area. Okay, now this one's really quite dark, all right? So just be careful that you don't overdo it, but like I said, again, what I do is I'll add this in here like that, and it leaves a really definitive mark. So what I like to do is I'll go back in, my lighter kind of tinge of that same hue, lighter value of that hue, and I'll just blend it right in, okay? Maybe I'll actually use my blender pen here. I haven't used it too much. Okay, but that is going in like so, okay? And again, this is on the glossy, okay? You can't really blend if it's like on a matte. I don't think. There's probably be too much absorption, but I don't know, try it out. Okay, so blending that in, see how that bridge looks? I think it looks nice and rustic too with that variation of hue on there. All right, now we've done that in our bridge area. Let's see what colors we have maybe for the meadow. Okay, let's grab a couple of these greens. Here's a couple of like a olivey type of green. I can use this in my shadow areas, okay? So where's your shadows? Well, there's a bunch of these little kind of bushy areas. It's really the maple tree, but I've used it as kind of like a hedge in these areas, okay? And there's some shadow areas within the design, the blooms and bridge stamp too. I can see it right in here. So I'm adding this darker tinge. That doesn't blend in really well, so I can go in with my lighter green, and you just kind of go right back into it. I'm using a little bit of lighter pressure, so I'm just kind of barely touching that green that I just added in there, and then I'm kind of just pulling that color out and blending it in with the surrounding area, okay? Go for texture in this case. A lot of times people, when they're using pens or something like that, or colored pencil, it's like zero texture, you know, Gamasol for your colored pencils, and zero kind of evidence of, like, I don't know, anything being done by hand with pens, okay? I love texture, so I'm going for kind of maximum texture when it comes to something like this. I can understand kind of like the flat types of outline designs where things are supposed to look really flat, okay, and where you might not want that texture. But in something like scenic stamping, where we have a variation of light, and texture is a kind of a really strong formidable tool within someone's kind of their visual vocabulary, I guess you can call it. Go for as much texture as you can. Okay, I love it. Okay, so that is that. This one up here can use a little bit more color, perhaps. Maybe on this one too. Let's go back to this one again. Okay, I used some of that grayish blue. Let's go a little bit stronger up there. The reason is this is so intense down here. I just want to bring up the intensity level just a touch in the sky. Okay, I don't want it like super blue or anything like that, but let's go with this. Okay. Just something like that. See that difference between those two sides? Okay. Now, if you get real streaky or something like that, don't worry about that, because we're going to do something about that too. All right? I'm going to bring in some white pigment ink in here, and it'll blend it all in, no problem. There's other things to come when we're working on these pieces. Maybe I'll bring some of this blue in here too. I'll just put it right over the top of that antique linen. Okay, it gives it more of this kind of aqua-ish tinge. Okay, because the antique linen is a warm color, and we're putting a blue over the top of that, so you're combining that warmth. The warmth means that there's a little bit of yellow in it, right? So yellow and blue mixed to form kind of a greenish tinge, okay? So that's a really nice color, isn't it? Sometimes it's a nicer color than just going straight with the direct blue, okay? So that's what we have here. Kind of deciding if I want to use some black on here. Let's go ahead and use the black. A lot of times, with whatever colors I stamp out my main imagery in, I like finishing it off with that same color. So, in this case, it might not be a full saturation of black in this case, okay? But it might be just kind of a gray tone of it, a gray tone application of the black. So you can control the amount of ink that you apply just by removing off the amount accordingly, okay? And how much pressure you apply. So I'm not going to apply that amount of pressure, but I'll just kind of lightly dab in here. So what I'm doing is I'm just kind of adding in to this little area. Probably with each tab, it's probably like a 2% gray or something like that. It's really quite light, okay? So you go 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. Or something like that, okay? So it's not like you're going 100% black, okay? So watch this right here on this tree. And at the base of the tree, kind of in the shadow that it's casting. So on the right side of this tree, I've added that tone like that, okay? You see it kind of just adds a little bit more framing, I guess, depth into the scene. Let's add some more right over around here. Can you see the difference right now? And it's just a little bit of color like that, a little bit of a tone like that in that corner. And it just kind of frames things off really nicely. Let me see if I can add a little bit in the sky in the left-hand upper corner. Like that, okay? It just kind of contains things and brings the viewer's attention kind of more, it's more focused to the interior, the main area of our piece like this when I kind of darken in the areas around it like that. All right, so that looks pretty good. Let's do the same thing here, okay? Again, it's not like, oh, I want a black meadow or something. No, it's not like that. And it's not like I want to make things darker. Yeah, I want to make things darker in certain areas, but I want to make things darker in certain areas so that the other areas seem lighter by contrast. All right, these are coming out pretty nice. I haven't done just like some traditional glossy cardstock coloring in a while. I don't know, it seems like I'm experimenting with other things. All right, that looks fine to me. Let's start going into, is it time? Let's see. I might make one of them kind of a little bit of a pinkish tinged flower. All right. Okay, so, or violet. I don't know, let me see here. Okay, so these are the 3mm Emoki acrylic paint pens. I don't even see where it says that brand name on there, if it does. It says it on the box, but not on the not on the pens themselves. Okay, so you really have to shake these up pretty good every time you use them. But that's a good thing, because I think that's the thing that keeps these pens from clogging, is because, you know, they separate pretty easily. So they're nice and thin, so they don't clog, and they're not drying up on your tips if you don't use them for a while. All right, so let's go into this. I'm not trying to color these exactly. The thing that I have in mind is kind of going for a little bit more of a kind of an impressionistic type of surface right here with these flowers in here, okay? Now, I might want some additional color in here, like I said. That being said, let me do something. Okay, if I'm doing, I was thinking about going with the pen in here, but now I just thought, you know, it'd be so much easier if I just did it with my alcohol pens, because I have some very faint alcohol pen colors, and that's kind of what I'm going after. Let's do that. Okay, so don't color in everything uniformly. Have some of these flowers a little bit lighter, okay, because flowers reflecting light, they're going to look a little bit different, okay? Yeah, I like this. It's like a really pale pink. I mean, you can go with a much more kind of explosive color scheme in here. Super bright flowers. You can make them look psychedelic if you want to. Okay. But that looks pretty good there, I think. I think that complements the green really nicely too. Okay. It's just a light tinge of that pink in there. Hmm. In fact, I like that so much, I'm going to do that with this one too. All right, can you hear that squeaking? I always get a kick out of that. I hope it's not just kind of driving someone up the wall like nails on a chalkboard or something like that. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. As it let's try to bring in a little bit of a like a warmer tinge of pink in here too. I'll just kind of put a little. I'm just kind of doing like something like that in here. A little scribble too. So we'll bring up the intensity of some of those flowers. Okay. So don't you feel that those flowers are kind of integrating with the surrounding area too? And that's by bringing in the browns and the greens into it. I wasn't trying to stay off of every flower perfectly, okay? So see that? So when you hold it at an arm's distance, I just think it integrates in with the surrounding area really nicely like that. Okay, let's try some of this white on here. I don't know if I even need it now, but let's use it, okay? I'm just adding in these little dots in here, just kind of, I want some of these flowers to kind of almost shimmer. Um, so that's why I'm adding these little areas of light onto it. This, I just did my a video on translucency, opacity, and transparency, okay? And these pens, as you add this down, they can be pretty opaque if you kind of layer it, but when I put this little white dot down, what I'm getting at here is um, the color, when it dries, when this acrylic paint dries, I find that it dries a little bit more transparent, so the colors underneath are going to show through, which can be good. Sometimes you want a really stark white dot, okay, but yeah, you can get that by building it up too, but sometimes it's good to kind of, I don't know, have it a little bit less opaque so that you get that integration of what that dot represents, which is a highlight sometimes, or a leaf on a tree being lit by the sun, or something like that. But having a little bit of that color kind of showing through in the end result can be good too. Again, so for that more integrated look. All right, so adding that in here. This is kind of a darker scene, so I'm not adding maybe quite as much of this. Okay, but that isn't not that. I want to add in some additional tones. So let's say these are the flowers right here around this bridge, but let's say I want to bring in some of that type of color in the background. So I'm going to add in some of these in the background, and it might kind of represent, a smaller flower or just a touch of that same color. Maybe that's too big, though. Maybe I should use my smaller one. Well, let's just try this out here. Yeah, this is a little bit big for that background, so let's go with something of that type of color in the 7mm. I love having these pens these days, and being able to work in color for things like this. I would have, if I only had my white paint pen, I'd be fine with that. But now that I have, kind of a vast range of, all kinds of different hues and intensities and values within that same hue, I don't know, it just kind of opens up the doors as far as what's possible these days. And these pens are just, I don't know. When paint pens first came out, or gel pens or something like that, I don't know. It was a couple $3 per, I don't know, some pens. Like a white paint pen or a silver pen. These days, I don't know. They're like in a pack like this, 42 pack. I don't remember how much it was, but I thought it was like 50 cents a pen. And they don't clog as much as they used to, okay? This one, I don't think ever clogs. Those old gel pens could, clog up quite a bit. Okay, so anyways, I'm adding in these kind of background little clusters of flowers. I'm kind of clustering it too, as opposed to doing it like every, 1/4 inch one dot or something like that. We tend to kind of fall into pattern. And I do too, okay? So every time I'm doing this, I'm kind of consciously thinking, okay, kind of cluster your little dots. This goes for things like if you're using white paint pen as stars, snowfall, or whatever. I don't know. It's just in us to just kind of do things kind of a little bit more structured, I think. So I can always tell that when people are doing that for the first time, and every dot, I don't know, it's about a 1/4 inch or so, evenly spaced out. So things like flowers, they tend to be more kind of clustered when you look at them out in nature. Unless, some field is just absolutely jam-packed. But like wildflowers, it's kind of more clustered. It's wherever something, dropped its seed, the previous season. Okay, this is white right here, and we'll integrate some of this in with some of those little pinkish floral patterns in the background like that. Okay. This might be my favorite blooms. These two right here might be my favorite blooms and bridge piece. It's because, I didn't have these paint pens before, and maybe I wasn't using my alcohol pens quite the same. So you kind of learn, as you go along. And maybe it's things like working on foils and things like that, vellum, working on different types of media and learning new techniques on that media with its whatever limitations. Sometimes you can go back to your, just your standard color work, but you bring back the things that you've learned and techniques you've learned on those other types of media, and you can incorporate it in with kind of your existing techniques. And I don't know if that's the case here, but I think maybe I'm seeing things like textures and lighting a little bit differently now. I don't know, maybe it's more refined, I guess. Or maybe some things have been more relaxed, although I was pretty relaxed on lighting before. Okay, so just going back in here, I've added in some shadows into my my wooden planks here on my bridge. So if you're doing that, then why not go back in and add some highlights into those planks too, so you can see my little areas of shadow going across that. But can you see my little dots going across here in line pattern too? Okay. Okay, so let's not take too much more time on these. I think these look fine as is, but my little refinement that I like doing on just about all my pieces is going in with some white pigment ink. Okay, you can use whatever brand you want. I typically used to use like my Hero Arts, Hero Hues pigment ink all the time on things like this. I didn't used to use Brilliance, okay, because I felt that Brilliance dried too fast. But then I started using Brilliance on things like foils and things like that. So I got much more of a, I don't know, a feel for this one. Not that you needed a ton of it, but I don't know. I might not have used this before because I thought it dried too fast. And that was mostly kind of if it was kind of a really juicy pad, but my pad isn't so juicy anymore, so. And I have complete control over this. It's not hard to do. But, okay, so where do you add something like this? I'm going to start adding it into my light areas where light meets dark, okay? So this area right here is a little bit lighter, okay? So I'm going to add a little bit. I love it at the base of tree trunks. Maybe my pad is too dry. I can barely see anything going on there. But can you see that just little tinge of white starting to appear right down there? That's kind of what you want. You want it to kind of happen slowly. Okay, now see, the more I add, the more light, really white, is being applied, right? Okay. Look at the base of the deer, the doe, okay? See that right there? I didn't cover up the whole thing. I just covered up some of it. But now look how nice it looks. We've kind of varied the object. So we vary areas in terms of light and dark. We vary objects in terms of light and dark and how we color them. But now we can even vary the foundational objects that were stamped into the scene in black ink. Now we can vary those, believe it or not. We can go back in, vary it after the fact, okay? After all these things have been laid into the scene, like so. Okay. Something like that. See that right there? How nice that looks in terms of the lighting. Let's put some of it. Now, where else is lighting? We have that lighting back there, right in back of the trees. Remember? Light, dark, light. Let's put some on the side of the trees that are facing the light. I'm going to put it in between these two trees here, too. Okay, see that right there on that side of that tree? Look how that little bit of light right there is really effective. We have some light down here. Let's bring a little bit down here, too. I just see this as, it's kind of enveloping everything in a little bit of like fog and mist. Okay. I think it integrates the objects into the scenery more. Okay, now see this tree right back here in the distance too? I'm going to make that one lighter so it looks farther back, okay? And maybe it's just a little bit farther back. It's not like it's 2 miles back or anything like that. Maybe just a few feet, okay? Okay, see how that looks? Now that will dry. When it dries, it won't be quite as light. So sometimes you have to make things a little bit lighter than what you think is the ideal. That one's a little bit too light. I can wipe some of it off too with, my dry side of my cotton ball too. All right, so that is that. On this one right here, remember what I was talking about? Don't be, worried about this area up in the sky. What I'm going to do is I'm going to be applying some of this around that lighter area, okay? I'm going to put some of it over some of my word stamps too, and that's fine. But see, if I got something that was a little bit too streak, I can just kind of obscure it a little bit with my white pigment ink. I always want to say white paint. Okay, so now see this area where it's light meets dark? See this light area in the sky is meeting this meadow. I'm going to put a little bit of this pigment ink coming in over that horizon so that it looks like the horizon is kind of, I don't know, kind of obscured by a little bit of moisture in the air that's being illuminated by the sky, meaning fog, right? That's what fog is. It's moisture that's illuminated that you can see. Well, I guess it doesn't have to be illuminated, but it's moisture in the air like that. Okay? See how that kind of obscured that horizon like that? But look how soft it looks. Now let's bring some of it down here, okay? I won't bring too much down here, but what you're doing is you're bringing lighting into these areas. It's lighting and texture. This bridge kind of takes on a different kind of spirit in this kind of illuminated fog too. I'm finding just the kind of the emotional quality of it looks a little bit different. I really need to re-ink this white pad here, but let's see. All right, look at that. This area down here has been illuminated like that, but doesn't it have a different feel to it? There's a softness to it, and I think that's very, I don't know, it adds to the spirit of the piece by having that in there. It's subtle, kind of, but I don't know, it's not that subtle. It's a small textural change, but I guess having that small textural change in there makes a big difference because everything else is very crisp around it. So it's a textural contrast, you know, how we're doing these color contrasts in terms of lighting. Well, this is a textural contrast. So you can't have the contrast, though, if you do it everywhere. All right? So that is that. All right? I really like that look. Okay, and there we go with here. See those little flowers in the background? How it carries out the pinkish tinge, you know, flowers in there. Same thing back in here. All right, I think I'll format these into a card. I've been doing that lately. Just a simple card format. And I think it makes, I don't know, it makes the pieces look a lot better. So let me do that, and we'll take a look and we'll see what these pieces can look like. Carded up, or whatever you call it, formatted. Okay, I have formatted the cards. I have spared you the time or the pain of watching me just kind of cut and format these, but just some simple formatting, a little bit of a line. I like to do that little border because I do these little dots in here, and that kind of matting or mounting brings out that type of little detail. I don't know. It's the easiest thing to do in terms of, I don't know, coming up with some sort of color around here. I mean, a double one would be really good. And this is just formatted onto a little card. Maybe I can do some interior quote in here too, I think. I think that would look really good. Maybe we'll do that. Okay, now on this one right here, I didn't really do too much embellishment, or if anything. So let's go in and do that. I was looking at these ones, and I thought, nah, this one's, I mean, it looks okay as is, but it really, in comparison to these with that crisp and diffused kind of mist like that, it just, this one looks a little anemic. So let's go in and add this kind of little texturing into the mix. Okay. This one's easy because it's, you know, we don't, you know, it may be kind of, I was going to say this one doesn't have any color, but then just as I was thinking that, I was thinking maybe this would look good to kind of just add a tinge of some color. It'd be like one of those, maybe it would be better if I didn't add in the warmth to it, but you know those kind of black and white photos where you just have spot coloring, so there's just a little bit of pink in here or something like that. That it might look kind of interesting, or maybe in this one it'd be like a blue, something to contrast against the warmth of the brown. I don't know. Something like that might be interesting, or might have been interesting. I could still do it, but I don't know, we'll see. Okay, so adding in these little clusters again of some flowers going back into the distance. It could just be lighting as well. So it could represent different things, but it's just bringing the areas to life in the distance a little bit. Okay. About like so. I'll hold this up so you can see it a little bit closer here in a second. All right, so that just kind of brings it to life a little bit from a textural standpoint. Also from a lighting standpoint, we're creating contrast between the white and the surrounding areas in there. Did I color these trees at all? Let's see, let's kind of create a little bit more contrast. So on the trees to the right of center, I'm adding the shade on the right side of the tree, okay? And the trees to the left, I am doing left side shading to reiterate the lighting direction. So the lighting is coming from center, so you just shade the tree trunks accordingly, okay? Let's see. I'm just going with some kind of brownish tinges and a little bit. Let's go with some gray here too. It's almost barely visible here. I always start off with lighter tones, and I'll kind of incrementally work to the darker tones if I have the colors available, and maybe some shadows down below too would be good. Let's go even darker. Usually in these multi-tone sets, there's multiple values of gray. Yeah, I don't see too many values here of gray in my sets here. That one was probably like a 40% gray. I need like a 60% gray or 70. I might have to dip into my other shuttle art set. I cleared up room off my desk not too long ago. Just because that had so much stuff all over the desk. Well, let me see if I can just get a little bit darker using this one. This one's the same one. I'll just add a little bit of a thicker layer of it. Okay, well, let's just leave it like that. Okay. I don't know. That surprises me. I thought I had like an 80% gray and a 60% gray and whatnot. Okay, let's go back to the brilliance. I should have re-inked this, but let's just go with it right here. Okay, so loading it up a little bit, blot it off a little bit so you get those little straggler hairs, off your cotton ball to get flattened out a little bit, and start applying accordingly. I'm going to apply it kind of on the inside of the tree trunks, okay? Meaning that's the kind of direction the light is coming from, the interior. It's lighter in here, so I'm adding the highlighting from that direction where light meets dark, okay? So you start on the light and then kind of creep it out into the darkness, okay? And remember how I did it on the this piece right here with the light coming from above the horizon? The horizon is light up there, so I'm adding some light, additional white pigment ink around that light, okay? It's light right here. Why not add a little bit in here, and we'll vary our bridge a little bit. It'll be in a little bit of a diffused, soft light, adding to that nice textural range. This is really helping it out. This is, I don't know, it just, as far as visual range and interest, this is changing it drastically here with a little bit of fog. I mean, you wouldn't think so, but it really does add a lot to the piece. Let's put that buck and a little bit of a mist like that. Okay. We'll Go like that. I think that should do it. So look at this, what this did right in here. Look at that. Kind of fog. See, it's here, none here, here, a little bit right here, a little bit right here. This is left alone. So it's just, you know, you vary it. You don't put everything everywhere, just like you don't put lighting everywhere. So this is lit right in here, right? And yeah, I mean, you can see it on this tree here. It's going light, dark, light, like that. Okay, so it just, I don't know, it makes the scenes come alive when you vary things, okay? From a textural standpoint, from a lighting standpoint, coloring, shading, etc. Just don't treat everything flat. Now you might do that, okay, that doesn't apply to all types of stamping if you're working with outline designs where you're filling up each cell uniformly, then yeah, you know, do things kind of in a flat application if it's conducive for that look. But on something like this, where we're talking about varied tones and shades and things like that, and different objects in here that represent different depths, then I would say vary it. It doesn't make things harder, but it really releases kind of the need for uniformity, so you can have things really kind of, you know, at different levels or whatnot. Okay, now let me see some different quotes. I want to look at some different quotes for this one and this one. I don't think I'll add anything more in this one. Well, I don't know, we can do something in like a path or something like that. Quote on the inside. We'll see. All right, so let me find something. Okay, I think I have some good quotes to go with these pieces here. On this one right here, let's go with the best and shortest road towards knowledge of truth is nature, okay? So this is, I don't know, they call it, you know, I mean, it's not a road, but it's kind of this little path here. And it's kind of going into this opening right here. I thought that fit that, this quote fit that visual pretty well, okay? Now I was trying to decide on whether or not I wanted to stamp this quote in a pigment ink or the dye-based ink on this, they call it lunch bag, this surface right here, and it feels like a lunch bag. I'd get a better impression, but I thought maybe having it kind of a softer look might be good. Kind of integrate in with the surrounding area really nicely. Okay, so you see that right there, and we can do. I think we'll add in a couple little flowers in here too to reiterate what's going on the front. All right, so off of the same scenic sentiment sheet, I haven't used this one quote too much over the years, but in wilderness I sense a miracle of life, and behind it our scientific accomplishments fade to trivia. Charles Lindbergh. I don't know, I thought when I look at this piece, I think that kind of can go with that pretty well. You know, you can do things two different ways with quote stamps. You can kind of find a quote that goes with your scene pretty well after you stamp it out, or you can kind of compose a scene around a quote too. And that's what I do sometimes, especially when it comes to things like people walking down a road or something like that. All right, so this is being done in pigment ink, of course, because I'm doing white on black with these quotes. If I ever don't get it, I'm just just eyeballing it. If I ever don't get it, I'll just stamp it on a separate piece of paper, kind of cut it out, and I'll put it right down there. I'd probably mat it just like the front with a little bit of a, border as well. But I thought that looks pretty good. This is just on text paper right here, as opposed to a cover stock. But, there's a firmness to the cardstock anyways. So, and paper is getting really expensive, or has become really expensive lately. My gosh, if they can even get it in some areas. Paper companies are just having a heck of a time trying to get their inventory. Okay, earth laughs and flowers. Okay, now so I already have a quote on the top of this one, so I don't think I'm going to add something to this, but sometimes I add kind of the smallest little elements like that. So let's go with this little bird again, okay? Let's just go up here like that, because that's reiterating that those goals right there. All right. And let's go in and let's bring in one extra layer of visual continuity here. So we can do things, you can do things big, but I'm going to do things like very, very small. And let's just go in to these pieces with, in this case, I'll bring a little bit of this pink in here like this, like it's a little touch of those flowers kind of on a, you're going to write, whatever, happy birthday, congratulations, whatever down here on this piece anyway. So this is just like a little visual element right here. That would be good too on the back here too, but it's just something very, very subtle. Okay, so you have this little area of kind of light like that, and then here's some more bits of it here. It kind of soaks in so you don't really see it too well. But like that in here, okay, the white will show up a little bit better in here, I think. So let's bring a little cluster of little flowers like this too. I'll put it around my quote. Like that. Okay. You don't want to get too close to reverse text with the same white because you don't want it to look like, there's dots in there. Okay, so I'm putting it kind of on the perimeter like that. All right. Something like that. It's it's just this kind of visual, I don't know, maybe vehicle, you might call it. Let's go with a little bit of a larger dot right here. This pink right here is almost too small. Let's go with this one right here. Okay, so let's add, yeah, that looks better. So you add it down like that. And then what you do is you put a couple right down here too, like this, in the lower corner. It's where someone would, put their initials or something like that. This paper is really soaking in the paint here, the acrylic paint, so it's not very visible, but for the best, I don't know, maybe it makes it more subtle. All right, so let's take a look here and see what we have. Okay, some nice visuals right there. I'm glad I put in the pink. I think that really added to it. And pink kind of against that green makes a nice complement. Notice the variation on the bridge. Okay, the alcohol markers really come in handy. That. I should have done it before and after. I don't know, I tend to forget about doing that type of thing, but... Alright, here's the black and white one. It has a tinge of color in there too, but it's kind of subtle. It's just a warm tinge. And we have our quote in here. Those little flowers around it like so. Alright, did I add some? Yeah, you can put a few little dots down there like that. Or you can put that deer. It'd be kind of interesting to stamp it in white right there, with your initials underneath it. All right, and earth laughs and flowers, okay? Look at that flowered little area up there, kind of fogging out, putting that white pigment ink right up on that horizon really makes that area, doesn't it? It obscures it more, but I think it makes it more interesting through the use of that kind of soft textured light up there. And then we kind of reiterate it down here, but again, it's not everywhere. It's just a little bit of pigment here, here, and here. Just as there's dark here, none here, dark here, you know what I mean? So you're just changing things around a little bit. And then your little visual continuity there and down here. And again, you'd put your name or whatever there for whoever you're sending the card to. So anyways, I had fun doing these pieces right here, pulling these things out from, I don't know how many years ago. I'll have to take a look at that and see. But the Blooms and Bridge. Some of these new tools and whatnot, I think, really enhance it. Things like these and certainly the alcohol markers, just to get into these little spaces easier and to vary our application of media on them like this, okay? It just makes it so much easier, and there's so many different mediums out there. If I did this on a matte cardstock, then we can use things like colored pencil, in addition to the alcohol markers if you want to. So you use your different media for whatever's conducive for the mark that you're going after and the overall look. And there's all sorts of different colors that are available to us in all of these different mediums, be it alcohol inks and thick and extra fine acrylic paint pens and whatnot. All right, so thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks as always for tuning into the Stampscapes channel.